There's a place that I know. It's where all the sunshine goes. The brightest spot along the highway one. A city where you always know someone. Hey, hey, where's it at? Hey, 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 Medicine Hat.
Welcome to Helping Hatters, and Emery Christie is my guest today. And tell me why we're talking, who you are, how you come to this place of Medicine Hat, Alberta.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So, yes, I'm Emery Christie. I have had what I would call a love affair with Medicine Hat for many, many years. I had a family member move here many years ago when all of our children were small, and on occasion I'd come and visit and really just loved the space. It's so different from where I come from. The landscape looks like another world. And this space is so rich with history and beauty and sunshine and parks and so many things that I admired. And years ago, when my life looked a lot differently and my children were much younger, a move was made and we found ourselves living here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I thought at the time I would spend the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you, I have no shortage of reasons to love it here. That's not how my story went, but
Right.
boy, did my time here leave an impression on me. And things that kept me coming back, it was a lot to do with the people that I connected with. And I worked in a human services role in supporting youth in the community. And I made some really meaningful connections within that role. And of course, there was our children's friends and people in our neighborhood. And it broke my heart when the decision was made, not by me, to leave this community. And so when I started doing readings, I'm a psychic medium.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been my career path for the last 9 years full time. So when I dove into this world of working in energy and intuition, it was right around the same time that Nirvana 101 in Medicine Hat was born. And so I had it on my radar and I thought, oh, well, maybe if I could work at this space once in a while, that I'd have more reason to be here and to see my family member and their family and to reconnect with friends and for my kids to see their friends and to do the things that I love. I'm such a creature of habit. It's like, oh, but the bank that I go to and my favorite grocery store,
Right.
and, never mind my dentist and my hairstylist and the chiropractor that I love so much. And, I'm such a creature of habit. So all of those things feel hard to change.
Yes.
And as I said, when I moved here, I planned on staying for forever. And so, yeah, when I formed my connection with Nirvana 101, it was so wonderful. I worked in the community at an event called Heal the Hat before I came here to Nirvana 101. And I did work at Heal the Hat a number of times. But when I came to Nirvana 101, they were so welcoming. And unlike so many different holistic and metaphysical and healing environments, or just other businesses in general, they're so gracious about welcoming people in. You have a gift, you have a skill, you teach a class, you offer services, you want to share it. Well, you can be self-employed and rent a room here, or you can be self-employed and rent a room for an hour to give you space.
Right.
If you can't see a client out of your home, or if you need a reasonably priced space to host a workshop. And so it was an amazing opportunity. And as I built a clientele, I visited more and more. And before you know it, the decision was made, because things in life had shifted again, that 3 years later we would move back. And So I could go on and on because I've been back and forth a few times.
Yes.
But I have been so fortunate to have a space that I'm comfortable with the team at Nirvana, who so many of them have been very close friends to me, as well as just a space of consistency that feels welcoming, and to have people come into this space and have a sense of community, and to see people I know, and to be able to connect with people time and time again through readings, through workshops, through other events that I host. It's been a beautiful thing. And every time I've lived in Medicine Hat and Redcliffe,
Hmm.
my circumstances have been different. My experiences have been different. And I will say, I never stop finding things to love and to be amazed at. And whether it's another, old structure that I've never noticed before,
Hmm.
or whether it's, walking through a park and appreciating something new, or whether it's more people that I meet, I just feel that there's such an abundance of things to love about this space.
Hmm.
And so it's a special place in my
Yeah.
heart.
It's your found built family.
Hmm. It is. It is. I'll reiterate something that was told to me a few years ago as I was preparing to move away once again.
Yeah.
I was told that by another healer who told me of an old healer that she knew, who told her years and years ago about how special Medicine Hat is and how there's such an abundance of healing energy in this space,
Mm,
much like the tale of the Medicine Hat and
right.
how it got its name, and that people come here to heal. That was absolutely true of me.
Mm,
That
yeah.
was absolutely true of the circumstances that led to the choice to come here the first time,
Hmm.
and the second time, and the third time.
Yeah.
And when I was preparing to move away the second time, again, not a decision that I made for me. It was something that I thought was best for my child.
Hmm.
And this healer told me that she was told that people come here to heal, but if they leave before they're done, they'll be back.
Mm,
And then she patted me on the shoulder and said, "You'll be back."
yeah.
And I said, "I don't know about that. I don't know about
Hmm.
that."
Hmm.
And I didn't. And I did come back for one final go at it.
You say final, but I still think you better leave that door open because
Mm,
there's a connection to Medicine Hat that is so deep rooted in your heart that
mhm.
this will always be a home to you in some capacities, right?
It
Whether you
will.
live here or not,
It will.
you
It
still
will.
come and practice and teach and connect with your community here. And you, you never know what that future may hold.
Yes.
So,
I think I have to say that I've had many times over the last, oh, 9 years since I've been doing readings, because I'm psychic. It doesn't mean I know everything. Let me tell you again, I wish somebody would tell me exactly what my life's supposed to look like. But that's
right.
the thing, it's free will, and it's bending to opportunities, and it's rising to the challenge, and it's being willing to adapt and choose change when things feel unlike how you want them to feel. And
Hmm.
so I just keep changing the things. And so yes, so I've eaten my words many times over. Never again. I'm never moving back to Lloyd. I'm never going to go back to Medicine Hat again as far as living. And none of those things are true.
Right.
None of those things are true. And it's interesting what we outgrow or what no longer fits at points doesn't mean it's permanent. Medicine Hat will always have sparkle and magic to me. I can't even explain it. It's like I drive down the street and I see a building on the corner, and
Yeah.
or I see the sun peek over a hill, and I think, oh, I look up at the open sky. I look at the curves of the coulees. I drive past Mount Alta. I again, the bank that I like, or
Right.
the store that I love. Oh my gosh, the local business that sells the home decor and the clothes.
Yeah.
It is my favorite.
Mm.
Flying Sparrow.
Mm.
I wish I could be their poster child. Like
Yes.
there's things that I love
Hmm.
about Medicine Hat, and again, the people within it. It's just such a vibrant, gifted place. And I often think, with the rich history of Medicine Hat and how far it goes back, it's so interesting to me to look at the fact that there are so many families that have been here since the inception of Medicine Hat
Mm.
or Redcliffe,
Hmm.
because of course I'm aware of the history of Redcliffe and that it was bigger and more thriving prior to devastation.
Mm.
And it's just so interesting to me that there's such a rich history that still has so many families deeply rooted here. And I think it would be difficult to find many communities that have such a high percentage of people directly connected to the original inhabitants that love it here
Mm.
and have no intention of ever leaving.
Yeah.
And that find such a sense of purpose and joy and appreciation
Hmm.
for their community. So I'm not the only one that sees how beautiful it is.
Yeah, I agree. And there is something, and every time I leave, it's just more and more beautiful. And maybe that's me again, getting out of the chaos and hustle and bustle of life, that I do notice every time I go someplace a little bit more of the beauty and awe. And you're right, it almost like a sigh of relief, takes your breath away at the same time
Mhm.
moment, and it's beautiful. And there's a lot of diverse spaces and people, and just you can find a little bit of everything
Mhm.
if you're wanting a little bit of everything.
I agree. And I'll address one thing, the fact that, I hear a lot of different perspectives from people because I talk to people all day, every day about things that are so far even from my life and my personal experience. So I learn a lot through the lens of so many people that I encounter. And I hear a lot of people talk about Medicine Hat being a very closed minded city and different things. I think that we're always going to find some people
Mhm.
that are rigid in their beliefs, and whether that tips over into, racism or ableism or, any other kind of oppressive belief or not, I will say that I really see so much of the exact opposite. And so much so, and even in my line of work, and I advertise and I put myself out there, and not just here in so many communities, but I see so little of it that when I do encounter it, I'm always amazed.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh yeah, it's like I've been living in a bubble, but I don't.
Right.
I don't live in a bubble. I sometimes forget.
Yeah.
And what I really found, and yes, this is with the people of Medicine Hat, but it is so much more than that. I just find that, when two humans sit here,
Hmm.
we generally find connection.
Yeah.
We find understanding. We find appreciation. We find sameness.
Yeah. Commonalities.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And even if we're using different terminologies or we come from different cultures or beliefs or lifestyles or whatever it may be, we make a connection and there's an understanding.
Hmm.
And people love sharing about themselves and they love sharing where they came from and what made them them. And I've never encountered anybody
Yeah.
that is close to that.
Hmm.
And, being able to, rather than look past differences and pretend that we're blind to it all, being curious with respect and without judgment and seeking to know and understand
Hmm.
pays off so royally. And I just love that there's so many people that are able to do that. So I think that there's a lot of beauty in human beings, but I absolutely find so much of it here. So in both my personal life experiences as well as professionally, Medicine Hat has been good to me. It's been a huge teacher, a huge teacher.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That's super cool.
All right. So I'm just going to take a quick moment. I'm just going to get connected from my team of spirits to your team of spirits, and of course, guided by source. So I'll just take a moment. So the first thing that I'm just going to acknowledge is that what pops out to me, I'm drawn to your eyes and your ears. And so these things more connect to a few different things. On one hand, your strengths in the physical world, but on the other hand, your strengths in the more psychic sense level. And so obviously, you've got some intuition, some connection to psychic senses. And again, I think all people have at least a hair up to a range. This would suggest that there's some clairvoyance as well as clairaudience. But it goes beyond that because it seems like all of a sudden it's like everything you're seeing, there's a lot of it. And I don't know if it's as far as like psychic senses, dreams, visions, things that catch your eye or pop up images in your head, or if it's more so that you're really in a place of like noticing and taking everything in.
Mhm.
And I suppose even just on a project level, though, it's all the details and it's surveying scenes and thinking about what's going to work. Now, the next thing when it comes to the ears. So, of course, it's connected to clairaudience, the psychic sense of hearing, which we can sometimes hear voices, noises, things, as if it were physical. Other times it's things that pop into our head, like, a statement or, a phrase, but something related to things that we don't know. Like, why would I think that? And then, of course, chatter noises in your dreams. Now, outside of that, though, what I really kind of connected to was it's like you being really aware of your senses again. So it was like almost this heightened sense of like your auditory skills in the physical. Again, may relate to, the creative ventures that you're doing. But I watched your head spin. And sometimes that can be connected to, hearing spirits, things that kind of catch your attention. I don't know if that's part of what's happening for you lately. But I also, again, just thought about you being just really not only sensitive, but perhaps m- maybe making sure that you're taking everything in. And then it can also connect to a higher sensitivity to what you're hearing right now.
Mhm.
And so sometimes those things that we hear, sometimes they hurt.
Mhm.
Sometimes they stay in the way we self talk. So I would be really, I would be careful, um, protective of your energy and who and what you expose yourself to, what they're saying, because you're at a higher sensitivity. I would also say, though, that one of the gifts that showed up in that was that you're such a good listener.
Mm.
And I think about how important that is and how you add to people's lives because you're able to hold space for them. So, if I may, I'd like to go forward a little bit. And I want you to know that going forward a little bit into who you are and what I see for you, um, there was just the most beautiful image. And it was an image of you. I saw you from about the waist up. You were standing and you just in all of the confidence that you have, you were public speaking
Mm.
to a big group. And to me, this just seems like where you're at your happiest.
Mm.
It's like your platform. And of course, sharing messages, whether it's at the helm of the classroom, whether it is in front of a live audience, whether it is broadcasted, there's so many different ways to get our messages out as well as writing,
Mhm.
right? So this could be extremely literal, like a motivational speaker, a life presenting, or it could be something where you maybe get your message out different ways. So it could be a little bit more symbolic. I think it's very literal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
incredibly literal. So when it just came with its most beautiful rush, which I always think is like a truth response. It's like, that's it. That's the one.
Mm.
That's right.
Mhm.
And no word of a lie, it gave me a little surge of emotion.
Yeah.
And I can only gather that that's your emotion, but I will also say that I, it just makes me so happy to think of you in that role
Mm.
because I know how meaningful you can be at sharing what you know.
Mm.
So I'm just going to see what else I find. Can I ask, do you have a dog or have you had a dog?
Yeah, I have a dog.
Okay. Did you ever? I don't know how many you've had in the past or if this is one that's living. Now, dogs symbolically, and sometimes when animals show up, whether we have them or not, sometimes, of course, they're um, either you can look at it symbols, they're symbolic messages, or if you're a believer in this, which I absolutely am, animals as guides, animals as messengers. And a guide is a representative of who you are and encourages those things. A messenger is more so something, it brings something that you need to know,
Mm.
guidance, lending you tools. And so, dog is always said to be man's best friend. Why? Because it's a symbol of loyalty.
Right.
But no matter what, trusty, stick by your side, there till the end, whatever you need, here I am.
Yep. Totally.
Right. So you're a dog person and you're a dog person.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm the dog personality
Yeah.
in human form.
And so it's beautiful because it really represents you. And so it's so interesting how so often people gravitate towards the things that really are very much who they are. I've had a lifelong love and fascination with rabbits, like my whole life, obsessed. I've had rabbits all my life, off and on. I draw them, I've painted them at every stage of my life. I have all sorts of little things with bunnies on them. And then, of course, when I first got into this work, what presents but a rabbit?
Mhm.
And then I learn about rabbit as an animal guide. I'm such a rabbit, it's not even funny. So, a little, I just want to take you just a little bit of a different direction again. And this could be related to career, it could be career that pushes this. On the other hand, free will choice
Mhm.
is the thing that prevails. And so, people often ask about future. We all want to know. I wish somebody would tell me exactly what's going to happen. But of course, that's not how almost anything in life works. And so I always impress upon people that the future is not so much fated and set in stone as it is set in motion, which
Mm.
means our free willed actions and choices, our intentions, our beliefs, our behaviors, our willingness to follow through or not do the thing has a huge ripple effect. And then sometimes there are other decision makers and factors that
Mhm.
are beyond our control that also have an impression on the course of action. So, what I see for you, it does show like a big leap. And a leap to me, the way that I see it, rarely is it connected to just travel. Sometimes it might be travel. So it might be big travel. It might be that there's some meaningful destination or a lot of travel in your future. But very often it's literally like moving.
Mm.
So that might not be where your head's at right now,
Mhm.
but it very well could be something that either you start thinking on, or perhaps at some point it makes sense for you. And so you give it some thought. And on the other hand, sometimes opportunity strikes.
Right.
And that's the only motivating factor. But sometimes when things are right, they're right.
Right.
So it does show like a big leap. Now, I'm just going to grab one more little piece. And so this is a little bit more around you and how you feel. So I know there's lots of different factors that impact how we feel, right from health, which I think is all rooted in emotion, beliefs, and experiences anyway, and not all the current ones. A lot of things from our whole lives past, but our environment, what's happening in life, what's happened recently, what we are looking forward to, responsibilities that we know are on our plate. And how I see it is it's kind of backwards because often we get to, December and oh my God, we're run off our feet. We're so exhausted. And I'm not saying that you might not have things on the go, but I feel like your energy actually picks back up
Mm.
in December, January.
Mm.
And so it might connect to some sense of completion, something out of the way, off your plate. It might connect to just some sort of other surge in your wellness, your life. And it looks like for you, I don't know if you've been more or less active lately, but movement is a huge, huge part of this. I know it gets the brain chemicals, positive brain
Mhm.
chemistry boosted. But I see honestly, Misty, do you hike? Do you hike? Do you walk or do you hike?
I like just walking with my doggo, which
Good.
hiking sounds like a little bit too adventurous, and
I
need a
agree.
backpack for that with supplies.
Yeah, I didn't want to judge, but I'm like running, hiking, it all sounds way too hard
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
But what it looked like, it is really just you getting outside and getting moving. Because I saw it from a downward angle,
Mm.
I would say that it gave me the illusion of almost like, hiking up something, which, I wouldn't wish
Sure.
that on anybody. So I think that the movement part is really important for you now. Of course, we want to take care of you and have balance, but I think that's really important for you.
100%.
Okay. Any question?
I think you're doing great thus far. I don't know if I have a question specifically.
Okay.
I just like where it's going, and that you can just read the vibes and kind of some trajectory for me that gives me some comfort, because I felt like I'm spinning on a weird axis of
Mhm.
unknowing and uncertainty
Isn't it interesting
and
how
balance.
we can feel that way, right? Where it's like you've got a project or you get to something, and when we kind of get to that point of maybe, oh, we're at that place where we wanted to be, and now we don't know where to go from here, right?
100%.
But I will tell you that it seems to me that you're going to find your clarity within the next year.
Great.
So there's going to be some clarity for you. Let's just see right now. I would say even about March, I think things will probably feel quite a bit more clear for you. And it might look like you investing yourself in a new project. So March feels good for you. And it's like you getting your feet on the ground, your head's back in the game. It feels like things are just like funneling and moving forward for you. This would be a great time for you if you're having scattered thoughts or little ideas, even if you're not able to organize them, jot things down and at least have a place to put them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And don't stress yourself over trying to figure out all the ins and outs,
Right.
because it seems like in March, all of a sudden, things are flowing again. And I think you're back to yourself.
Great.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. That'll be a great time for you.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, in the meantime, when we're going through life experiences, and they do take their toll, the same level of self care that we have to do physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, when things are more peaceful or more routine or more calm, that's not necessarily going to be the same as what you're going to need when you're feeling exhausted, when you're feeling scattered, when you're feeling that pressure of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll really want to look at things that can calm the nervous system and bring grounding to your root chakra, things that can help you feel like you're in your body and calm. And I feel like your sleep right now is just not where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you like restless, turning. I think your eyes are open more than they should be. This is not your usual. And change, good and not so desirable,
Right.
lack or the fear of not having what we need, including our basic needs met. So when we're going through job changes and all sorts of things, it throws us off in that aspect too. So even the consideration of change is disheveling to our nervous system. And then loss. And loss, of course, can connect to death, but it can be more symbolic deaths, ends of relationships, changes, loss, or even job changes, moves, shifts in roles and responsibilities, all endings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when we know it's good for us or when it's something we chose, does it always mean it's comfortable? Everything that changes takes us out of our comfort zone, where we kind of get nestled in this idea that we know what to expect.
Right.
And it gives us sometimes this sense of control.
Mm-hmm.
And then we feel in control. And in reality, although our actions, choices, beliefs, and intentions really do help us align our energy where we want to go, there's always going to be unknown factors, right?
Yeah.
So when we move into the unknown, it's not uncommon for our hips and low back to start maybe giving us a little bit of grief, feeling a little bit of strain or stress. And so, not that everybody was going to get that, but I just got a nudge kind of right across the back. So, I thought that that might be something you're experiencing. But just remember, give yourself grace as you go through whatever it is. It's not abnormal to have challenges with sleep, the nervous system, not just connecting to sleep, but our emotional regulation
Mm.
and mental health connected to things like anxiety, depression, and lack of energy,
Mm-hmm.
as well as difficulty organizing information, making decisions, remembering.
Yeah.
All of those things are potentially affected when we're in this state. And we all visit there at times.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us live there,
Right.
unfortunately, and once in a while visit what it's more like to be functional and grounded, right? But everybody goes from that functional and calm and safe state to those other experiences. And sometimes when we're there, we don't give ourselves the love and the grace that we need,
Yeah.
and the comfort in that experience. We're not always there for us the way we would be if it was someone else going through this, right?
Totally.
And so I always suggest to people, read about what the root chakra is when it's imbalanced, or what the nervous system is when it's in crisis.
Mm.
And then look at what causes it.
Right.
And then remind yourself that you're a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, even though it's not comfortable, it's completely normal.
Yeah.
And we just need to be good about giving ourselves,
The space and grace.
yes.
Yeah. And I can 100% say that I have felt, acknowledged, and somewhat accepted that I've been going through a grieving process for well over a year, like the losses, and they're for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to ride those emotions and the what ifs and play out scenarios and feel the
Mm-hmm.
emotions and go up and down like a
Mm-hmm.
roller coaster ride that you really would rather not be buckled into. But
Absolutely. And, it's always said healing's not for the faint of heart,
Mm.
right? Because there's a reason why not everybody's doing it.
yeah, that's
There's a
fair.
reason why people are staying in things that make them miserable or sick. There's a reason why people refuse to address the things that are creating so much chaos in their lives. And, I could liken a lot of things to, being in a relationship that you love that person, but it's just not working. So when we make job changes, when we move, when we let go of a friendship that's not working, it's not just because we want to.
Right.
It's because we know deep down inside that
For our
the
best
season
interest.
has
Yes.
passed, right? And that it is time for change. And I often reiterate the fact that if we don't like how we feel, that's the exact reason why we need to look at where change needs to be made. And I know not everything is just walk away, let it go, cut it
Right.
off, it's over and done. Sometimes it's making changes within systems. Sometimes it's asking for what we need. Sometimes it's advocating for ourselves.
Or setting the boundaries of your limits of care, and
Exactly.
like that sometimes can save you a whole lot of heartache and just
Yeah.
the trauma that you can ensue because you've just let everything in and you've also let everything out.
And that is probably something that I myself have struggled with, but something that I see probably more than most things when I'm working with clients. A lot of us have difficulty with boundaries,
Yeah.
and receiving and asking for our needs to be met. And as I've said, to so many people, whether it's offering them guidance or sharing my own story, it's really strange how our relationships, and I know there's more factors in life, but our relationships, it's the one place where so many of us don't expect a return for our investment. We
Hmm.
can't get more time back. We don't get more energy. And we can do anything with our time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we invest in people who aren't investing in us.
Right.
And then on the same hand, sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's an environment that just doesn't feel good anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the same hand, so many of us are also extremely accountable for the fact that we lower the bar on our self-worth and we don't ask. And we've spent a lifetime saying, oh, take whatever you need as long as you're happy. Oh no, I'm good.
Yeah.
And that doesn't serve us either, right? So it's starting here. Rather than looking at who's taking from me and how they're not thinking about me, it's, oh no, it's me who's not speaking up.
Yeah. Who's
But
giving it away?
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. But when we know we deserve better and when we want to feel better, it does push us into having to make decisions that in an ideal world, I would love to stay in this job. I'd love to stay in this relationship. I'd love to keep this friendship or stay living in this house. But if I'm being honest and kind and fair to myself, it's not working.
Yeah.
And it's challenging. And those are things that, again, throw us out of our comfort zone. And sometimes we have to grieve things in many layers. And whatever it is that we're healing, as well as whatever it is that we're grieving, always seems to be connected to so many more things than we initially
Yeah.
think it is, right? And all of a sudden, one thing leads to another, and we're like, how did I even get here?
Yeah. You pull that one thread and it's unraveling a whole bunch, and you're just, yeah, furrowing through all the things. Because there is so much. You're right. It is all interconnected. And when it's like, oh, it was my job. Oh, wait, it was my relationship. Oh, wait, it was this. And you start to dig up a lot, and then hit the childhood on the end sides and say, oh, there's a lot of stuff. And like you said, we did a past life reading together, and it's just interesting to see how it does make you feel less insane, for a lack of a better word, because it feels like, okay, there are reasons why I feel so discombobulated.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I think that, when we're limited to our view of I'm human, I'm born, only the things I remember and I'm aware of should affect me. And then we're also often nurtured
Mm.
in families, homes, societies where we're led to believe that we're making a big deal about a thing if we have an emotion or if something isn't instantly processed and it's behind us. The past is the past. So when things weigh heavy and they're not dealt with, it's funny what comes back to us.
Mhm.
It's amazing what's stored. And then there's what's rooted in our subconscious that we don't even know is there, but yet it's left a huge imprint. And then there's the past life connections. And as I know I've shared with you, that past lives, we can experience them sometimes, through a reader may share, as I do, sometimes through dreams, sometimes meditation, sometimes hypnosis. But I always mention to people that they should be aware that there's a reason why we get access to those pieces.
Mm.
Why this?
Mhm.
Of all things, why am I seeing this or experiencing this or getting this awareness? Because it always connects to you in this lifetime. And what you just said about, for lack of a better term, okay, so maybe I'm not insane. Like there's got to be a reason why I feel the way I feel. I hear that so many times through the course of my work. It's been 9 years of sharing messages with people. And if there's something I've learned, all people have at least, again, a smidge of intuition. Most people have more.
Mhm.
Most of us don't have people that can help us understand those things, let alone believe
Mm.
or encourage, or are willing to say, I don't know what this is, but let me figure it out with you.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of suppression.
Mhm.
Whereas when we look at ancient cultures, there is no new age. Old, ancient practices are all connected to people receiving their own messages, having experiences, having visions, being able to speak to source by whatever name it is they choose. And we've all been capable to some degree.
Mhm.
And so many other things have created this suppression and oppression.
Mhm.
And so when I pick up on people's psychic senses, again, maybe not the words that I would use, but I hear a lot of, thank God I'm not crazy. Or I thought I was the only one.
Mm.
Nobody else believed me. And I look at those moments and the relief on people's faces. And that's big. I think about my own child at 11. Mom, if you hadn't started doing this, I would have thought I was crazy.
Mm.
And, it just so heartbreaking. I think about my own self as a child, feeling trapped in my experience and knowing that I had a lot of them and not being able to put my finger on them or not having, a space to talk about those things.
Or even the language of
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. And again, aside from even psychic senses, just affirmation, acknowledgement, validation
Hmm.
around traumas, around life experiences, around who a person is and what their heart is or what their traits and attributes are. How many of us walk through life feeling just so incredibly lonely and alone, even in crowds, even with tons of friends and connection, because we don't really feel seen,
Hmm.
because we don't really feel valued or understood for who we are, never mind somebody to believe us when we share a trauma.
Mm.
And those things end up being really big for
Yeah. And the opposite of healing and growing and tapping more into your own power source.
Mhm.
It's debilitating.
Absolutely. And it's often said, you can't heal something that you don't acknowledge.
Yeah.
It's like if you didn't know you were bleeding from a specific spot, how would you stop the bleeding?
Right.
You can't. And so sometimes we are fortunate enough that healing happens in a more natural way where it's like we don't really have to seek out specific practices or professionals and we get where we need to go. Or there are times where we think we've got what we need, whether it's on our own or with support. And then maybe years later, a whole new wave
Right.
slams us in the face. We're like, I thought I was done with this. Oh my God. Oh, did I not do it right the first time? No, this is just the way life happens, right? Sometimes when we're ready for that next level,
Right.
that's when it hits. And then, when we think about whether it's like counseling, psychology, hypnotherapy, more energy healers, there's all sorts of different types of healing and ways to kind of see ourselves
Hmm.
and find what we need. And sometimes we get bits here and then we get bits there.
Yeah.
And then we get bits there. And other times we try the things that are the standard for our society. Well, we went to the doctor.
Mhm.
Well, we tried antidepressants. We went to the psychologist, which again I think is still an amazing thing. I think everybody should do it. We go through the typical venues. And when we've gone through the typical venues, and we're still not okay.
And still feel crazy.
And whether it's physical,
Uh-huh.
which again, I always add is emotional, and there's a huge component missing in our Western view of what wellness and physical health is and means. Um, and then, there's so many different facets, but it's like when we go through, yeah, those typical places and spaces that we're supposed to get better and feel better, and then we don't, people sit sometimes in despair because they've tried everything.
Mhm.
And I can promise that as I, got into this, I always believed in these things, the metaphysical energy, the other side, psychic senses. I had no idea how many different intuitive practices there were, and not just divination methods.
Mhm.
I had no idea that there were so many energy-based services, holistic services, connected healing services, balancing services connected to energy.
Mhm.
And everything energy is rooted in emotion. And again, this is the root of our wellness. And for anybody that doesn't have that knowledge, I look at all things connected to the energy of the chakras. And they all represent different parts of our bodies. But again, the physical is the last place things show up. So
Mm.
everything starts with emotion we've experienced and things either bring us into balance or out of balance. And whatever takes away from our balance, traumas, negative belief systems, different things, they hurt us even when we think they're not.
Right.
And what we don't heal ends up showing up in little ways in so many different areas of our life. The way we think about ourselves, our confidence,
Mhm.
how we present ourselves, our connections, our willingness to try new things.
Mm.
But then it even bleeds even over into our emotional well-being, our mental health, and then how we physically feel. And there's a big difference between our physical wellness and our medical wellness,
Mm.
if you ask me,
Mhm.
because we can have aches and pains and have zero reason why we have aches and pains. We
Right.
can feel exhausted and there still might not be a physical reason,
Mhm.
because emotional energy is always at the root of that, even if there are things that show up on your physical blood tests and things like that.
Right.
And then the medical is the last place. So when I got into doing all of this work, every time I thought I'd heard it all, there were 5 more different methods, 5 more different courses, 5 more different ancient practices. And there's just no end of
Mhm.
things to learn. It's honestly incredible. And that's something that I wish that people knew and understood, is that there are so many amazing resources. Unfortunately, and again, I think the Western medical system has lots of great about it. I think that there are lots of necessities about it. I utilize it myself, and I've been fortunate to have some wonderful doctors. But the thing is that fortunately for Medicine Hat, there are so many amazing people within this community. And I myself have often said, without alternative services, I don't know how people can be well, because I can't be.
Mhm.
And I have a few practitioners, one in particular here in Medicine Hat, that has a formal designation and does some things differently than anyone else in this community does. And that man has been a huge part of my wellness and the wellness of my family, as well as so many of my coworkers and so many of my clients.
Mhm.
But Medicine Hat is rich in amazing helpers.
Mhm.
Something else that I'll add is that I think that what a lot of people would be surprised is how open so many in the professional community,
Mm.
in all professional communities
Yeah.
within Medicine Hat, are, right from counselors, psychologists, nurses, nurse practitioners, lawyers, dentists, uh, different instructors and professors at the college. I've seen so many
Mhm.
over time who are so open, and such an amazing blend of logic and fact and professionalism, and the space for all of these other things. And what people value for themselves, they typically are able to hold space for those around them. So even in the world of psychologists and counselors and registered social workers in Medicine Hat, we are rich with people that are able to not only help, but for clients that might be extra intuitive and very sensitive empaths, able to pick up emotional pain of others, and having a hard time with those things, or even having experiences outside of the physical sense experiences, whether they understand it or not. I guarantee you, there are a number of people in this community that wouldn't think that you were crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So I love that about Medicine Hat. There's just so many resources.
Yeah, and that's how I stumbled upon you, is when I was a year ago in some flighty lands and discombobulated, and I was throwing everything out into the world, my fishing line, and seeing what could help me
Mhm.
recover, and not even just recover to, like, because I didn't know where I was going into the past me, because I don't think I'd ever felt the way I wanted to. I was living outside of me, and I wanted to start living inside of me. And so yes, medical doctor was one of my first, because that's kind of what I needed
Mhm.
for the outside world
Yeah.
to say it's okay to take a break. And then
Mhm.
you and a life coach were some of my first lifelines that made me feel, again, less insane, with community and somebody who believed in me, and also gave me that the hope of the future, and not just outside of me, again, that there could be goodness outside, but goodness within
Mm.
me, to move past what my plights had truly amounted to, and that my breaking point, right? So that's why you're here, and
Oh,
you are a helping hatter, and you're so adorable right now.
that means so much to me, Misty. I'm always in awe of the people that come to me and that trust me, that are willing to be vulnerable and open. And I think about a time in my life, and it was a lot of my life, where I felt that disconnect and not really feeling seen and heard. And then I came to a point in my life where I had that just deep longing for like deep connection and relationships that really mattered, and that intimacy that you can only share with somebody through vulnerability and really understanding and not having, big walls up. And I realized how rare that is,
Hmm.
how rare that is, even with our family members, even with our spouses, even with our best friends,
Yeah.
and the people we're surrounded with every day that should know us and that we should know.
Hmm.
And it was heartbreaking. It was the loneliest time of my life coming to that realization. And yet I'd lived in that for so long. And it was, there's a good friend of mine that works in this community, that happened upon the place that I was working at back in the day,
Hmm.
working in the human services sector, with youth. And she was hired, and it was this weird instant connection. And I just knew that I loved her and I had to have her in my life. And I felt a little bit like a psycho, but I needed
Yeah.
her, whatever that was.
Yeah.
It felt good.
Yeah.
And she's one of my closest friends to this day. But I always say that she's my first really balanced friendship.
Mm.
And she was that first person. And then it's almost like repeating after that. It was like repeating a recipe. Once you figure it out, you just have to do it again.
Right.
Right. And I, so I feel like I've been fortunate in making some meaningful connections since then. But in my professional realm, like, it's so hard not to just love the
Mm.
people that come across, and to feel just so much amazement and so much gratitude and respect that a stranger
Mhm.
would show up and be open with me in ways that other people don't get,
Mhm.
that you would trust me, that I get to see those parts.
Mhm.
And that will just never be something that I will take for granted.
Yeah.
That it's interesting to me, to think back to the day that we first met, and that you weren't feeling your best. And yet, you know how I remember that day?
Mm.
God, I love her energy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That really was
Yeah.
very interesting.
Right.
And, it was just this draw, this pull.
Yep.
And you know what? Sometimes it's personality, sometimes it's energy. But I found you, even in all of your change and transition, and things that you were managing and dealing with, I found you magnetic.
Mhm.
And, I think that's who you are. I
Yeah.
don't think it's just, the fact that I think that we click or
Right.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, even in all of our struggles and our hardest times, even when we're not feeling ourselves and we feel so lost and fallen away from who we are, we're not gone.
Right.
And, as you were going through transition, and this is something that I think most people end up experiencing and suffering, as you went through transition, and there's lots of different transitions, whether we leave jobs because, we quit, we need change, we're fired, we take a leave, our health changes, we retire, we go out on our own to do something different. There's all sorts of reasons why. In addition, you think about ending relationships, you think about making moves, all these transitions in life. And then, and with relationships, I'll just add, there's things like divorces, there's things like separations, there's also being widowed, there's also children growing up, there's all
Mhm.
sorts of things that happen that shift it. And when transition happens and people feel lost, that's very often when you realize, or where I point out to people, that they've over identified with their roles, with their titles.
Right.
It's like, oh, Misty, are you not more than a label?
Right. Yes.
You know? So, Misty the teacher, no longer existed. So, oh my God,
Yeah. What's
Misty
left?
doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And I super subscribe to that.
Yeah. But you think about in our society, hi, tell me who you are. Well, I'm a teacher.
Right.
I'm this, I'm that, blah, blah, blah.
Define it by what you do.
Yeah, past me would have said, at one point in my life, hi, I'm Emery. I'm married. I'm a mom of two. I'm an at home mom. At other times, I would have told you what my job was. And now, on the other side of a marriage behind me, children grown, self employed, everything's different, right?
Mhm.
And, I can remember a time where it wasn't even that I didn't know who I was. I also didn't even know what I liked to do. I had no hobbies. It's just so crazy how things can be so all consuming. And yet, it's like we feel like we're not even living our own lives.
Like you're on autopilot. I think I even said
Mhm.
recently, like we are the living zombies. Like when you're in that
Rinse, repeat.
societal, this is what you do, and you don't have to think much about it. You just got to do it. Versus feel what you want. Like what's deep down calling to you, and where again do those skills, passions, interests intersect that
Mhm.
can lead to something that eventually hopefully there's financial gain out of it, because we know we still live in a society where we need money.
Yeah, it's a necessary exchange, right? Nobody's going to come if I'm bartering chickens or something. Probably.
A few, you'll get a
But
few.
there are a few. That's fair. But the bank's not going to accept that if I
Right.
need to go, pay for my car or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, fair point. But that idea that we fall into the idea that we are our relationships, we are our jobs, and that only gives people a hint of probably where we spend our time and what some of our responsibilities are.
Right.
It probably should be a hint at what some of our skills and capacities are. But let's face it, there are people that are really great at what they do, and there are people that are not. There are, parents that are really maternal and paternal and rise to the challenge of parenting and then some, and then there are some that absolutely don't.
Right.
So it would be remiss to think that a label or even 5 labels
Right.
should be enough for a whole person
Well, and
to identify as. And when you peel it all back, it's like, oh, it turns out that even Misty, who stepped away from a teaching career, is an amazing speaker.
yeah,
That
still an educator. You can take the teacher out of the
exactly.
classroom, but you can't take the
Yeah.
teacher out of me.
And I think I said to you last year something that I have shared to some people as well, that a teacher in our society, we believe it's someone that has a teaching degree and that's the job you get hired for.
Mhm.
However, what makes a teacher effective? It's somebody with knowledge. It's somebody with a message to share and with a purpose.
And the
And
ability to
hopefully,
connect with your
exactly,
audience.
the ability to connect with people.
Mhm.
And, I say to people all the time, one of the most probably important gifts and strengths that a person can have is to be a people person and to be able to make those connections naturally, because you can't teach that.
Mhm.
You can't teach that. And you even think about leadership in any of our jobs or in different aspects of life that we might be observing, even if it's not our lives. What makes an effective leader? Well, it's not the person with the loudest voice, nor is it in parenting, nor is it in the classroom.
Mhm.
Right? How is it that a person's able to be engaged? What is it that's engaging?
Mhm.
Is this person that much more interesting than this person?
Mhm.
Or is it the fact that they know how to deliver a message with kindness and respect? They perhaps speak to people the way they want to be spoken to. They're able to hold space and listen and have empathy
Mhm.
and maybe bring some energy to it.
Well, and feel their message, like have
Yeah.
lived it, have truly believed that this is a truth they are holding and wanting to share with others for reasons for them to grab their truths and uplift themselves again and empower, I think is the goal. And that's
Absolutely.
why all the greats that have come before us, they're speaking our truths and just mirroring that to us and making us feel like excited about it.
hmm even speaking about that, it makes me think of I've been a parent. My kids are grown now. I also worked in the school systems in a support role for many years before and not long after I had children. And I remember in the Saskatchewan education system when the transition came from specialty teachers to art teachers were losing their art rooms and their
Mm.
full-time art gigs. And the French teacher was, now a cart and maybe had to wear a few more hats and even physical education generalists dissipated. And it was more about having bodies in places and what often worked with schedules
Mm.
than making sure we had the person that was passionate about the thing doing the thing,
Mm-hmm.
because you do notice passion,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even in my work, I'm trained in a lot of different things. And some of them have been courses that I've taken, energy healing practices that I've done. And have I learned from some of those things? Yes. Uh, but do I offer a lot of those things? No.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, it is not my place to offer something I'm not truly passionate about,
Mm.
because it's going to suck my energy dry
Right.
and it's not going to bring you the most benefit. So I'll leave it to the people that is their niche, that is their thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's recognizable.
Right.
And so, you know, in the education system, I can tell you my daughter at one point had a teacher who had no interest in teaching.
Mm.
And that person was close to retirement and just was done,
Mm-hmm.
done. And I had a first grader who believed her teacher hated her the whole year.
Mm.
And yes, she was sensitive in a lot of different ways, but I just think, you can pick up on people's vibes sometimes, right? So when we're people in any industry that bring passion
Mm-hmm.
and bring excitement, and we can acknowledge people and we can connect and we make people feel seen, I think that those things are not only things that are more likely to bring us success in whatever we're doing and in getting our message across, but it's a beautiful thing because then those messages keep rippling
Mm-hmm.
because excitement is contagious.
Oh, for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah, sparking the match and lighting the fire and letting the embers burn in people. And that's what I feel like. I just have this like little fire started in me, and that I want to turn it into a bonfire. Truly, I am ready.
Hmm.
And I know I this is the biggest lesson this last year has taught me is time is something I cannot control or
Hmm.
very easily manipulate in my favor. And the moment I try to, it usually backfires. So I need to just like live the space and grace and
Hmm.
know that I can't force it, because I've been forcing things and trying to do what others tell me to do in this way I Tetris life together. And it hasn't really, it taught me a lot along the way and I would never change it. But I don't think it was as self serving. It was outwardly serving.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot about this world and about the people in it, past, present, and future, I think. And as well as a lot about me and where can my purpose and place be in Medicine Hat, in Alberta, in Canada, in the world
Hmm.
at large. What can my impact be where this tiny drop could turn into a big wave of change? Because I want a better future for every single human being, no matter what.
And that right there is what we want, right? We want change makers. We want people who are willing to be vulnerable and share and do it from the best of their ability from a place that's meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
I look at so many different professions. There's sometimes a sense where with certain people, you know that they're in it because they love it, or you know they're in it because they think it's meaningful work and they want to be the helpers, or they want to be the teachers, or there's different value. And then sometimes, and I found this working in human services and crisis intervention roles, sometimes you have the people that are there for other reasons. And especially if these roles or jobs involve supporting people, if you have people that aren't really in it for the people, you really pick up on it quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're wondering why, and a paycheck, is that really the reason? And I guess yes.
Mm,
At times that's what it comes
yeah,
down to.
mm,
And like I never thought of doing anything else. So this is what I'm doing and this is where I ended up
yeah,
and it doesn't serve me or others
yeah,
and we're just in this loop.
yeah. Sometimes I think, you know, it's possible too when it feels like people aren't in it for the people and yet the people connection needs to be there. Obviously, sometimes people find themselves in roles that just aren't for them.
Mhm.
Sometimes I also think people are in it for the wrong reasons. I think sometimes, though, all of us have found ourselves in positions where we go in one way and then things happen, whether it's on the job or in our environment or in other parts of our life, and it really just affects how we feel and how we function. And I know it's up to us to recognize when we're not at our best or when we're not able to give or when we are tapped out. But boy, what a hard thing it is to face that, to accept it. And look at how difficult it is to see ourselves and to give ourselves the same grace and understanding that we would give others.
Mhm.
You know, taking space away from work, taking space away from responsibilities, those things are scary for everybody.
Mhm.
Even if you know there will be a paycheck, people fear about what other people will think and feel bad about not doing all of the things because, oh my gosh, it's got to get done. Well, it probably will get done eventually, even
Yeah.
if it's not you.
Right.
But even look at how hard it is for people to quit jobs. They just feel so bad. You know, it'll inconvenience. This is your life.
Right. And you only got
That's
one
their
of it
business.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. You know, everything's manageable. But yeah, sometimes it's really just that it's so difficult for us to be able to accept the things that we can't change and to change the things that we can.
Totally. Love that. So since you have moved away for now, but are still coming back.
You never know what
Yeah,
that looks like.
yeah. But you're still coming back and doing some service work here.
Mhm.
What does that look like, and how would people connect with you if they wanted to have have an Emery Christie experience?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to connect. So for the time being, I do continue to come back to Medicine Hat, and so Nirvana's been my home for all of these years, for 8+ years now, and so this is always a place where when I do come back, you can find me, and at present time, it's back to a visit a month, and at some point that will change.
Hmm.
But when it changes, I would anticipate it would at least be, a couple times a year.
Yeah.
And aside from that, everything I do, I can do over Zoom or over the phone. I prefer Zoom because I love to be able to see people as much as
Hmm.
I am not great with technology
Right.
and it doesn't take much to confuse me or throw me off, but it's so nice just to be able to see who you're talking to and be able to, experience in that way and have even a picture in your mind's eye when that person reaches out again. But it's not impossible to do readings and to teach and hold space for someone without that.
Hmm.
So Zoom, I didn't do a lot of it until actually the second COVID shutdown.
Hmm.
And I think that people are far more open to it now. And I find that, if anything, it really just makes scheduling way easier and way more possible. So anything I can do in person, I can do by Zoom. In addition to that, I teach workshops and, of course, I host group events and things like that. So I just had a full week of hosting group events here in Medicine Hat as well as individual events. And I love all of them equally. They're just all very different. So those things sometimes also occur online when it comes to workshops. So I teach energy basics, which is part of my intuition and mediumship development workshop now. It used to be a separate entity, but there's portions where we focus on caring for our energy, calming our nervous system, getting in our body, which is something
Hmm.
that's difficult and not natural
Right.
for a lot of us. Lots of us do not live in a functional place in our body. And I guarantee I am that person. So I have to strive extra hard, even if there's not, chaos or struggle happening in life.
Hmm.
And so I have to strive extra hard for that. But so I teach people different tools, but then I teach them more about who they are and understanding about how energy works and what psychic senses are and how they connect to our physical senses,
Mm.
both in strength and in challenge. And then different tips and tricks to tap into those things, and then how to connect to each other and how to connect to the other side and how to understand some of those things. And so I do more of those workshops all the time online.
Hmm.
And although often people, they want the in person, more and more people give so much more positive feedback on the online because it allows us to do weekly. It allows us to have more time. It allows us to come back over and over with time to process and practice. It also isn't so much to take on all at one point in time. In my current group, I've got 3 clients, I think, in BC,
Mm.
2 in Alberta, 1 in Saskatchewan, and 1 on the East Coast in the States.
Okay.
And so, it's just so cool because it allows us to really be expansive. So I'm not saying I'll never teach in person again at
Yeah.
Medicine Hat, but I'm definitely moving a lot more to doing that online because I see the benefits.
Yeah, I totally do. Even as a teacher online, there were perks, and there was great things that came out of it. Some people just focused on the negative, but I'm like, well, let's take the
Change is hard.
good. Let's take the good and move forward with that. And you're right. There's a different kind of intimacy and connection that can be built through a video chat, and the
Mhm.
abilities that a person's more comfortable. You're right. They're at home in their own setting,
Mm.
hopefully in the coziest possible scenario.
Yep.
And they kind of get to, because to come into somebody else's space with other people,
Mhm.
it's a lot. It can be that nervous system's then heightened,
Yeah.
whereas you can bypass that
Yeah.
step and hopefully be a lot more calm, because you're in your own space. Not saying all spaces are calm,
Mhm.
but I see that even me being a participant in those, that
Mhm.
I'm like, this is nice. And you're right, the weekly breaks to
Mhm.
absorb or apply really do make it more impactful. And I think a long-term investment come to pass, that you actually can ingrain that into you, whatever you're trying to learn.
Mhm. Mhm. And with what you brought up about, people's comfort. I've had a lot of people over the years that they want to learn tools to take care of themselves or to understand so that they can be more calm, so they can be more confident, so they can help mitigate their anxiety and their fear. And then on the same hand, a lot of people have a hard time, whether it is some social anxiety, whether it's overwhelmed with energy of groups. And so at times I have people that want to attend, but it's how many people are going to be there? Is the room going to be full? What's it set up like? Can I sit near the exit? Like things like that.
Mhm.
And we're all sensitive in different ways. I'm extremely sensitive to my environment, which doesn't mean I'm also still not okay with crowds and being in certain places, but it depends what I have to do.
Mhm.
And so I do try to keep things on a fairly small group level, but again, being in the comfort of one's own home, picking a comfortable space, wearing comfortable clothes. When people come for readings, I find it's almost like they see it almost sometimes as an event. Some people actually get dressed up for it. It's like, this is exciting. This is a new experience. And then on the other hand, things don't always fit with schedules, and you know what, we can show up as we are,
Mhm.
and the energy is still going to be the same no matter how we do it, right?
Mhm.
So it's a lot of personal preference for people, but yeah, so that's how I offer services and will continue to offer services. So when I'm in person, and otherwise Zoom and phone. And is it okay if I mention where I might be contacted?
That's what I was going to ask next,
Perfect.
actually. So yes,
So
please.
so when I do visit Medicine Hat, I always make sure I advertise on Facebook. And of course, that doesn't always reach everybody, but generally things are also linked to the Nirvana 101 Facebook. And sometimes, depending how organized I am, they make their way onto the website or might
Mhm.
be posted at the door. So those things might give you a heads up of an impending visit. But the other thing is, of course, I primarily work from my Facebook. So Emery Christie Psychic Medium, not Emery Christie, my personal page, but Emery Christie Psychic Medium is a great place to send a message if you're looking for a service or want to join in something that I'm offering, whether it's online or in person. And the other thing is text. So I have a Saskatchewan number because I lived on the border in Lloydminster when I got it. It's 306-307-4144. And so texting me is an amazing way to get a hold of me, if not messaging my Facebook. I won't bother rambling on my email, but it's linked to my Facebook as well. But yeah, I'm not great at answering the phone. I'm always on the go. I'm busy with clients. And so typically the ringer on my work phone isn't on. But yeah, typically other venues to get a hold of me work best.
Well, that's great. And thank you so much for hanging out with me and helping me on my path, both the last year and the years to follow, because what you have shared with me and held space for me in all the little sessions. I've done probably like 4 or 5 different things with you in the last year now, and it all will coalesce into this person that you see in a reading of sharing great things, hopefully with people who will do great things for this world. And thank you for being one of those great things in our world.
Thank you. It's such an honor and always my pleasure.
Oh, you're fantastic. Thanks again. And thanks for being on the Helping Hatters, even though you're like quasi-hatter.
Thank you.
You're welcome back anytime, every time.
Thank you. I'm an honorary member at the very least.
You for sure
It
are.
will always be home in my heart.
Okay, we're going to high five. Fantastic.
Thank you.
There's a place that I know, it's where all the sunshine goes, the brightest spot along the highway 1, a city where you always know someone. Hey, hey, where's it at? Hey, 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 Medicine Hat. Sitting on the treaty 7 and 4, a sunny spot with an open door, a running river with a few coolies, and the 88 Olympic teepee. Hey, hey, would you look at that? Hey, 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 Medicine Hat. Oh, its roots run deep, a stomping ground of community, a sunny city where you always matter. We call it Hatters Helping Hatters, Medicine Hat. Hop in a hot air balloon, rise up, you'll enjoy the view. Don't forget my Delta pottery, those bricks have history. Hey, hey, welcome back. Hey, 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 Medicine Hat. Oh, its roots run deep, a stomping ground of community, sunny city where you always matter. We call it Hatters Helping Hatters, Medicine Hat.
Helping Hatters was created, hosted, and produced by Misty Zanger and is a Mystified Productions podcast.